I've had an amazing time with my first playthrough of Tainted Grail: The Fall of Avalon. Making my way from a ragged prisoner to a deadly battle mage was a journey I won't forget for a long time. But when I get around to starting my second playthrough, I'll be going into it with a lot more knowledge that will help me get my footing much faster. And I figured I should put this video together to share that information with you. So here are over a dozen tips I wish I knew before playing Fall of Avalon. When I first made it to the Horns of the South, I was grabbing everything I could get my hands on, unsure of how scarce resources might be in this game. Turns out my concern was unwarranted, as many resources will respawn in pretty short order. Plants were something that didn't surprise me too much when they respawned, but this is still great news for budding alchemists. What was more of a surprise was ore veins. Find yourself some iron, copper, or some other metal that you can mine with a pickaxe, and you can keep coming back to that spot, handy for if you like crafting your own weapons and armour. The third resource which will respawn are wood blocks. Often near settlements or encampments, you will find one of these chopping blocks, and so long as you have an axe in your inventory, you can chop up the nearby logs to be rewarded with wood. These logs will gradually reappear as the day goes by, and this is especially important if you're a completionist, as one early quest requires a grand total of 150 wood to fix up a nearby village. If you want to respawn these materials faster than just waiting around, you can always sleep at a bed or campfire and have time pass that way. Sadly, the contents of containers don't respawn, so any treasure chests you dig up with your shovel or random crates you come across are one-time only rewards, meaning it's really just the crafting components that you can find an unlimited number of. That being said, enemies do also respawn with time, and what is an enemy if not just a future corpse for you to loot? While most crafting materials take time to reappear, fish can be caught an unlimited number of times without any waiting around. Find yourself a fishing rod, have it equipped and head to any coast or shoreline to start catching fish, crabs, and sometimes even some junk you can sell. The fishing minigame is pretty straightforward, just keep your hook in the rectangle by holding or releasing the button and you'll reel the fish in. Whenever you catch a fish, it will be instantly converted into fish fillets, with bigger fish yielding more of these at once. You can combine 3 of these together at any cooking station in order to make yourself some sea soup, a particularly potent healing item in the early game which kept me alive better than any potion. Fish aren't just good as food though, they can also be the best way to make money in the game. By heading to this spot on the map, just west of the fish icon on the map and north of where you first appeared on the island, you will find this special fishing spot, easily identified by the overturned boat and fishing rod sticking out of the sand. Here you can catch a very special herring, which rather than turning into fillets, instead stay as their own item, which has a base value of 1000 coin. This is an insanely high value item in the early game and can easily make it so you can afford any item you want, provided you're patient enough to spend a few days fishing. Like many open world games, Fall of Avalon has a fast travel system. However, you can't just travel to and from anywhere. In order to unlock fast travel options, you should be keeping your eyes peeled for these pillars. As you approach them, they will light up, making them far easier to spot in the future, especially as they will shoot a beam of light towards the sky. These pillars serve as fast travel points. By touching them, you can fast travel to any other pillars you have previously uncovered. Once you unlock the other map regions, you can also travel between regions quickly this way, which is something I especially appreciated. If you ever find yourself away from these pillars but still want to fast travel, then you can place down a campfire, provided that you're outside. If you choose the fuel option, which does cost you some resources which we'll talk about later, then you will be able to fast travel from your campsite to a pillar, though you won't be able to instantly teleport back to your fire. By the All-Mother, there are so many different skill trees in this game. When you first start looking for all these potential perks, it can be a tad overwhelming. So I'm here to reassure you that any playstyle you want to choose can be made to work. I'm sure there will be some builds that are more powerful than others, but you don't need to worry about that. Just play however you want to, and feel free to mess around with a few different weapon types in the early game until you figure out what most clicks with you. As you adventure, you will come across many enchanted items with effects that complement different playstyles. The key to making your specific build work is finding items with effects that align with your chosen fighting style. You can find heavy knight's armour, which provides a decent level of armour rating, while helping you manage your stamina better and recover fast from overexertion. Or if you're stealthy, then you can instead wear the assassin's set for a hefty boost to sneak attack damage, ensuring you get one-shot kills on the bandits lingering in the Southern Realm. These are a couple of basic and straightforward armor sets you will find easily enough in the starting hours of a game, but the deeper you explore, the more varied and interesting items you will find. From swords that hurt you with each swing but cause your enemies to bleed, to bows that deal bonus damage when using weaker arrows, there really is a perfect bit of gear for every conceivable build, and it does make me excited to start working on character build videos in the near future. I also want to take a brief moment to reassure you about perk placement. If you end up putting a bunch of points into the bows tree early on, but then decide you'd rather fight with big two-handed swords, then you might feel like you wasted all those level ups. Fortunately, you can find a special item called an Origin Potion, which resets all spent attribute and skill points, letting you respec your build whenever you wish. These potions are relatively rare, but even the most casual of explorers should come across a few as they travel, and if you can find your way through the elusive Alchemist Guild faction questline, then you will eventually be able to craft these potions yourself, essentially allowing you to rework your build as often as you'd like once you reach the late game. When I first created my character in this game, I went for a bit of a stealth archer style of build, but as the game progressed, I slowly started working in a few spells here and there, and by the end of the game, I was using nothing but spells and wands to augment them. While you don't need to be a full-on magic convert like me, I would highly recommend making use of mana in whatever works best for you. You can use destructive elemental spells in order to deal damage at range while building up status effects, summon creatures to fight by your side, or buff your character with shielding and healing spells. Hell, there's even a spell that can turn enemies into cheese if that's more your sort of thing. It's worth noting that healing and summoning spells can be cast outside of combat, allowing you to use up your mana without the added stress of enemies attacking you. Even if you decide you never want to cast a single spell, there are still certain weapons out there that can consume mana in order to deal additional damage, giving full-on warriors a way to make use of their mana. As someone who is scared of being in large bodies of water, believe me when I tell you that you should be swimming in every lake and stream you find. Be it travelling to nearby wrecks or islands, or diving straight down to search for treasure chests, there are numerous valuable items that can be found only if you're willing to go swimming. The only danger while diving is running out of air, but the bar at the top of the screen will warn you of how long you can hold your breath for, and the duration tends to be pretty generous. There are even a few items that you can craft to increase this timer further, but I found I never needed it. On a related note, the world of Avalon is jam-packed with loot, characters and quests, so you should be searching every inch of the land if you want to experience everything this game has to offer. I spent over 30 hours in the Horns of the South, trying desperately to find everything the area had to offer, and I still ended up returning multiple times later on in my playthrough, and each time I found something new. On one return journey, I found a pair of bandit camps, one of which was home to the Spellslinger set, great armour for battle mages early on. During another return to the Horns, I found a guy trapped in a cage. I assumed this was just a generic NPC who would give me some gold for saving them, but it turned out to be the event that triggers a full faction quest line. I was over 50 hours in before finding this faction, which you could conceivably learn about within your first few hours. There is so much hidden away in this game, but I'm half convinced that I've still managed to pass by a full faction questline somewhere, even with nearly 80 hours put into the base game. Arguably one of the most rewarding sights you will come across as you play are the various shrines scattered throughout Avalon. By sacrificing animal parts at these shrines, you will gain permanent boons that make your character stronger. The most common of these shrine types are the Druidic shrines. You should be able to find 7 of these per region, and at each one you can offer up any animal part to get your reward. This means you can sacrifice meat, hide, claws, literally anything you got from a beast of the land. Once you've made your offering, you will then receive both an item and a stat buff. For the Horns of the South, each Druidic shrine you activate will increase all incoming healing by 5% and increase the damage of your critical hits by 3%. Find all 7 of these shrines and you'll end up with a total boost of 35% to healing and 21% to critical damage, which is nothing to sniff at. On top of this, each shrine will also grant you a piece of the Waning Moon set, giving you yet another choice of cool looking armour to wear. And as if that wasn't enough, you'll also receive a blessing for praying at all the Druidic shrines in a region, boosting health, mana or stamina by 10 points. It's not a huge boost, but these shrines have already given you so much, making this just the cherry on the cake. But that's not even all there is when it comes to shrines. You can also find specific shrines dedicated to different types of animals. These will require very specific body parts from the animal in question, but in turn usually net you a very powerful permanent stat upgrade. As an example, the Shrine of the Bear requires a trio of bear claws, and by giving them to the shrine, you will permanently deal 5% bonus damage with all physical attacks. But we're somehow still not done with shrines, as there are also these Stagfather shrines you'll find in the wilderness. By activating these, you will be presented with a challenge to hunt down a trio of weird deer in a very short time limit. The first time you succeed in this task, you will learn some special crafting recipes, which can let you make powerful weapons and armour, though in order to craft them, you'll need specific crafting reagents which you'll only gather through completing more of these shrines. Honestly, these are probably the least important, and maybe least exciting of all the shrines, but I still wanted to explain them as they did confuse me a little when I first came across one. Reading is important, and it saddens me whenever I see another TikTok talking about the literacy crisis that we're apparently undergoing. Fortunately, Awaken Realms put in a bunch of readable notes and books to help spark a love of the written word in all potential players. While many of the pieces of literature you encounter just add a little world building and lore, many more serve a practical purpose. Some papers are important for quests, either starting them or being needed to turn in to progress them, and others will teach you crafting recipes. For this reason, you may wish to buy notes and books from merchants whenever you see them, but obviously you don't want to buy a book you've already read. Fortunately, the devs figured out that problem and came up with a simple solution. If you have yet to read a book or note, then it will have this circular symbol on its icon, letting you know at a glance that you need to read it. As well as literature, you can also read more when it comes to the equipment you use. You'll often see the read more option on different consumables, weapons, and armour, and by holding the button shown, you will learn extra information relating to the item. This can tell you precisely what type of weapon you're using, very helpful if you're not certain if something's a sword or a dagger and have already invested heavily into the dagger skill tree. It can also show you the attribute requirements if you've already reached them, handy for checking before you drink an origin potion and respec. You can also find explanations for different status effects like bleed or poison, and if nothing else, you can sometimes get a fun little item description for some extra flavour. Travelling through Avalon at night is particularly dangerous. Not only is visibility drastically reduced, but the weirdness that coats the land also spawns dangerous enemies and corrupts those that haven't taken precautions to protect themselves. Some of the enemies that spawn at night can be especially challenging, with this big beastie in particular being the only enemy which killed me multiple times in my playthrough. If you find yourself out at night and the weirdness starts spawning in dangerous foes, then don't feel like you have to stick around and fight. You can actually despawn these weird spawn by running into settlements. At night there will be this strange barrier surrounding every major settlement in the game, and even the odd encampment too. When heading through these, you will become protected from these creatures, and can safely rest through the remainder of the night without being wakened by the weirdness. While the night can be dangerous, there are rewards for brave travellers willing to take the risk of a nocturnal exploration. The major benefit is gaining ethereal cobwebs. Whenever you kill something during a weird night, you will find the standard items on their corpse, but additionally they will carry ethereal cobwebs on them. These cobwebs have a variety of uses, such as crafting certain items and completing the odd quest, but there's also one which we've gone over already. If you want to fuel your bonfire, you have to burn cobwebs in order to unlock additional options such as fast travel and accessing your stash. You will also unlock the Identify option here. As well as ethereal cobwebs, enemies that you kill at night will sometimes also have unidentified objects, which are shown by these question marks. By placing your bonfire and using the Identify option, you can sacrifice even more cobwebs in order to learn what those items actually are and have them added to your inventory. It's a bit of a gamble as to what you actually get through this method, as sometimes it might just be a single animal hide, whereas other times you could end up with a powerful weapon that's been upgraded several times. Yeah, like, duh, Sarge, that's pretty obvious. Of course you want to avoid taking damage. What next? Are you going to point out that puppies are cute, or that trans rights are human rights? Alright, Captain Obvious. While all this stuff may seem like pretty basic observations, when it comes to taking damage in Fall of Avalon, you can only take a couple of attacks in the early game before you end up dead. Once you've found some decent armour and sunk some levels into endurance, you can start to become a little more tanky, but early on, this just isn't viable. So in order to avoid damage entirely, there's a couple of systems in place you can take advantage of. Dodging is the simpler of the two mechanics, and the one that I used throughout the game. With a single button press, you can quickly dash in the direction you are moving, letting you dodge out the way of incoming melee attacks or projectiles. Certain items and perks can allow you to gain more dashes in a row, as too can lowering the weight of your armour. Dashing out of the way of attacks is a pretty easy way to dodge damage, and really doesn't take all that much practice to get the hang of. Parrying, on the other hand, is much trickier to master, and works more as a high-risk, high-reward method of avoiding taking damage. By pressing the block button at the perfect time, you will parry an incoming melee attack, making it deal no damage at all, and also opening up your opponent for an easy strike. However, if you don't press the block button at the perfect time, then you're probably just going to take the full brunt of the attack, which is the exact opposite of what we were trying to do. Fortunately, there are ways to improve parrying, namely a skill tree and certain weapons with parry-based enchantments, like the parrying dagger I found in the Horns of the South, which doubles the parry window, making it much easier to actually deflect attacks. The other downside is that not every equipped weapon has a block function, and therefore cannot parry. While melee weapons and shields will allow you to parry attacks, spells don't provide you with that option. I also assume you can't parry attacks with bows, though I haven't actually checked that one, and I was already surprised to learn that you can parry while dual wielding, so that's something I might test out in the future. Just know that dodges are the easy way to avoid damage, while parrying is something that will take a fair bit of practice to master. While wandering, you will see a compass at the top of the screen. Not only is this helpful for checking your bearings, but it will also highlight various different things. Your tracked quest will always be present as this orange marker, helping you direct yourself to your target with ease. You can also place a custom marker on the overworld map, and that will also show up on your compass. All standard stuff so far, but still pretty helpful. The two big things though are enemies and locations. Enemies show up as red symbols on your compass, and are separated into animals, standard enemies, and boss type enemies, giving you a different symbol for each. This is great for not only giving you a rough idea of how challenging the enemy you're approaching will be, but it also gives you great situational awareness, allowing you to more easily get the drop on enemies and help prevent you from being ambushed too often. You'll also spot question marks on your compass, which are undiscovered locations. There are so many different areas to explore in this game, and some of them are hidden away from prying eyes. The compass marker can be a really good way to spot these locations, giving you a rough direction to head towards and start investigating. You're going to end up looting so much stuff as you play through this game, and nobody likes to be over-encumbered. Fortunately, there's a way to deal with this issue. Stash boxes can be found in every major settlement, and even in a couple of player homes. You can store an infinite number of items in this container, and all stash boxes are connected to each other, meaning you can easily manage your inventory. There are also options to instantly deposit all crafting components at once, and for each category you can also move everything in that category into the box or into your inventory. Good for if you need to pick up a book for a quest but can't remember which one, or if you want to ditch all your potions and just take a few back with you. When you visit a merchant, you'll also see an option at the top of the screen that says Sell from Stash. This allows you to sell items that you stored in your stash box, meaning you don't need to grab all your valuables from your stash box and lug them to a merchant. Instead, anytime you get back to a settlement, feel free to deposit any items that you looted just to sell, and they'll remain in the box to be sold at your leisure. Honestly, I love that the devs put these boxes into the game. As for lootaholics like me, it makes the whole experience so much more streamlined and enjoyable, as inventory management becomes drastically easier when I'm not having to navigate between a dozen different containers or slow walk my valuables to the local merchants. I've also just realised as I'm writing this script that merchants have an unlimited gold supply, which is also incredibly helpful, as you don't then have to sell your items at several different stores and then sleep for a couple of days to refresh their gold supply. Might not be the most immersive or realistic way to design things, but it is very player friendly and cuts down on busy work. The final tip I wanted to give to all of you is to check out the Journal tab in the player menu. This has 4 separate sub-menus for characters, enemies, lore, and fish. While all of these are good for expanding on the world building and teaching you more about Avalon, the real highlight for me is reminding me who different characters are. I have a terrible memory, especially when it comes to people's names, and so often I'll be talking with an NPC and they mention another character who I should go and talk to. I remember faces, not names, so when a character is brought up, I can just go into the journal to put a face to the name and figure out who it is that we were just discussing. If you have a terrible memory like me, then this can be a great way to refresh yourself on various people, creatures, and locations that you've come across as you play. I'm also going to be reading through all the different lore entries before I start working on character builds, as I'd love to be able to add backstories to those videos, but that requires me to know more about the wider world. I hope that some of the advice I gave in this video proved to be helpful. If you have any tips of your own, then feel free to share them in the comments, and leave a like on the video if I did help you out. A big thank you to all my Patreon supporters and channel members, and as always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.